For the past 2 weeks, I've been doing experiments in dopamine fasting, and I've got some really interesting takeaways. So let's get into it. So first, I want to talk a little bit about what dopamine fasting is. So basically, it's the idea that you take all of your really pretty addictive activities, like, well, for me, it was mostly social media. So I deleted Instagram and Twitter and, all of the other ones, especially TikTok. Although I did fail a couple times, I'm gonna be honest about it. But I came away with some really interesting thoughts, so I thought I would share them with you. So first I wanna bring up a point about social media and all these kind of addictive apps that we spend our entire lives on. And it's just that people spend like their entire professional life trying to get you to spend the most amount of time as possible on their app. While there are exceptions, they aren't necessarily looking out for your best interest. They really just want to say that they have the users that spend the most time on their app. And like I said, it's not inherently a bad thing. There are a lot of really cool online communities and places on the internet where you can get into really interesting conversations and meet new people and do a lot of good stuff. So that isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is that I can't read. Not literally, but because I get too bored. I've talked to a lot of my friends about this, and they say the same thing. No matter how interesting whatever you're reading is, you can kind of get bored and tired and done with it after only a few minutes. And I kind of thought about that a little bit more, especially with school starting back up again, and I'm forced to read a lot more. And I was wondering why this transition happened, well, at least for me, where I would, in high school, I would read a bunch. I love to read. Honestly, the biggest difference from high school to college for me is I actually spent more time on social media and had a lot more free time in college, surprisingly. So the idea with dopamine fasting is that you cut out all of the really highly addictive parts of your daily routine. And in my case, this is most of the experiment, was I cut out Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, everything that I would ever normally be on during the day, and basically just made my phone as boring as I could possibly make it, just to get me off of there. Another note on dopamine fasting is that it's a little bit of a misnomer in that your dopamine levels technically stay the same. So your dopamine stays pretty consistent. You kind of just need it to live as a human. But what changes is the frequency that you're receiving the dopamine, and also your ability to control your impulses. So that's the biggest part. Is to me, it actually became an addiction with social media. I would just open up my phone and my thumb would automatically just go to Instagram, and magic. It was nonsense. It just kind of became, I spent too much time on there, plus the reading thing. So I just wanted to see what it would be like if I quit everything for a couple weeks. The biggest takeaway I had, or at least in the first 72 hours, I was full of these urges of just wanting to get on my phone or use it to waste time or do something else just on my phone. And since I deleted all these apps, which was honestly the hardest part, I actually went and deleted everything, which I'd never done before. God, I sound like an addict. So, you get these urges to go on social media or do whatever else. And I kind of took a note from meditation, where there's often this comparison that they use to the sky and the clouds, or highway and traffic. So basically, the clouds are your emotion or your urges or whatever else, and that passes, and then you end up with just the sky. So the idea is that's with really any emotion, where you can say, I don't know, I feel sad, but it's just a passing emotion, and you can sit there and you can be with the emotion and you can understand it, but you don't have to necessarily indulge going on Instagram or whatever else. Same with the traffic idea, where if you have a lane of traffic and you have all these cars coming by, you can just basically compare those cars to emotions. So you have happy car, sad car, an urge car with all of your addictions. And it's not that these cars are necessarily bad. You wouldn't look at a highway and say good, bad cars. They're just emotions that people feel, like a human. And so they all pass in one way or another. So as far as addiction goes, you can just sit with that desire to get on Instagram, in my case, and sit with that and be like, okay, what am I what's my real reason for wanting to get on Instagram? Is it just bored absent-mindedness? What can I use to fill that need? And you can solve your problems that way. Anyway, so over these 2 weeks, I really went through that probably every single day. But overall, dopamine fasting actually kind of surprised me in that after like the first few days, I relapsed a little bit, where like probably with anything, relapse is kind of part of the process maybe. But my main point in telling you this is to tell you that what my takeaways were. And honestly, I'm like, after those first few days, I kind of lost interest in Instagram. I felt like I wasn't really missing anything. Same with TikTok and like Twitter maybe a little bit because it's news, but I just listened to a news podcast. And I've actually kind of stuck with it even past the experiment. And it's been pretty interesting. I feel like with social media in particular, you end up reading a lot of things that give you a lot of energy, whether it's good or bad energy, and nowhere to put it, you know? So you're like sitting there all hyped about some political thing or another, and then you never take any action, and it ends up just kind of building up inside of you. And that can be good or bad. That can fuel good things, or that can fuel really bad things. So anyway, overall, the experiment, I'm done with it. I downloaded Instagram and Twitter. I didn't download TikTok again, but probably for the best. But I think overall, it's been a really cool experience. I'm gonna do more experiments, and that's like pretty much all I got for you. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week.